Hello, I'm Cole Keister. Welcome to my interpersonal communication project. The purpose of this project is to share with you some information and concepts that I learned in Human Services Counseling 508 at Liberty University. Next slide. During the semester, I developed a few overarching goals to help me become a more effective communicator. Goal 1 is to learn and listen more intimately and personally in an effort to understand the individual and to ensure appropriate responses to them. Goal 2 is to develop skills and drive conversations in a direction that encourages openness and a closer relationship. Goal 3 is to cultivate effective communication skills in order to be more relational with individuals as I attempt to express my concern for them, share with them the salvation available through Jesus Christ, and live an example of the character of Christ in front of all people. Next slide. First question I had to answer is, what is communication? Well, communication, according to Stewart, is the continuous, complex, collaborative process of verbal and nonverbal meaning making. Now, interpersonal communication is different. You're probably wondering, in what way? Well, it focuses on and maximizes the personal, pays attention to the uniqueness of the individual. It understands that personalities cannot be measured and that each person is different. It understands the responsiveness of individuals and that some people will respond to one thing one way and others will respond a different way. It considers the reflectiveness of people and individuals and that we are aware of ourselves and of other concepts that are outside of what we see. It also considers addressability, the way that we are linguistic people, that we talk and use language when we communicate. Now you're probably asking yourself, why is it important for me to understand effective interpersonal communication? In Stewart's text, there was an important quote that I found to be rather profound. Stewart said there is a direct link between the quality of your communication and the quality of your life. Now think about that for just a moment. Ask yourself these questions. Is your message really getting through to the people you're talking to? Are you really hearing other people when they speak to you? How much better could my life be, could your life be, if we communicated better? Next slide. The first step in this process was to take a look at our own behavioral blend, according to the DISC model of Carbonell. In this model, there are 4 personality types, and most people are a blend of some of these. You've got the Ds that are active, task-oriented people. They tend to be looked at as arrogant or overbearing, but they're born leaders. They really gravitate towards leadership positions. And you have the Is that are active, people-oriented. They love challenging things and they're direct and to the point. And they also desire to be in charge. Then you have the passive, people-oriented S's. These people are fun-loving and outgoing. They talk a lot and they're very people-focused. Then you have the passive, task-oriented C's. These people are sensitive and loving, caring and gracious, and they prefer to be behind the scenes. Next slide. Well, my personal behavioral blend, according to the This Is Expected of Me graph of Carbonell's, is an SC personality. This means that I typically am submissive, that I'm not the center of attention most of the time, and that I'm humble and quiet. Now, according to the This Is Me profile, I have an ISC personality. It means I like to influence people and interact with people. It means that I'm happy in the limelight or in the background. It also means that I'm firm in my beliefs and I stand up for what I believe is right. These characteristics are actually pretty true about me, so I wasn't surprised to find them out. Next slide. It's important for me to take responsibility of my behavioral blend and consider the strengths and weaknesses of it, to understand what's going on inside my head. Some of my strengths are that I'm caring, I think a lot, and I enjoy problem solving. I have very strong people skills. I also like to solve difficult problems. I step up to the challenge, but there are some things that I need to watch out for, that I need to guard against. Sometimes I'm too soft when confrontation is what is needed. I tend to give people the benefit of the doubt. Other times I'm too slow to act. I'm indecisive and I should be faster at that. Sometimes I just use toxic words to hurt the loved ones that are closest to me. Next slide. saying that there's effective communication means that there is ineffective communication, and there are potential barriers to that. Sometimes our listening doesn't work quite right, and we don't communicate well with others. Sometimes we hear in our own opinion. We hear what the people are saying, and then we change that to what we want it to be. Sometimes we listen with our emotions. Words or preconceived attitudes about the speaker will affect the way that we listen. Peterson calls this thinking with your emotions the flat brain syndrome. You get stirred up in your emotions, and it squishes your heart and your brain, and then your eyes and ears don't work like they're supposed to. Other times there's just fatigue. Sometimes the words go in, and we're tired, so our brain doesn't work fast enough, and we're delayed in our responses. Of course, you've got semantics. Some people use different words different ways. Then there are times there's discrepancies in the nonverbal. What that means is your face or your actions are not saying what your words are saying, and that confuses people and affects communication. Next slide. Another big problem is noise pollution. You got all these different things here. Your phones, you're wanting to be outside, or wondering what's going on at home, or what's for dinner. These are all things that get in our way of hearing properly. Next slide. You have internal and external noise pollution. Internal would be your own personal thoughts, your personal beliefs. Sometimes you just decide not to listen. Then you have habits of not listening to certain people, and sometimes you're emotionally disturbed, like we discussed with the flat brain syndrome. External factors will be a person's speaker's volume and tone, loud noises like cars and planes or music, electronic devices like cell phones and TVs. Sometimes just wanting to be outside affects how we listen. I personally tend to think ahead and interrupt people at times, and I think about other things instead of listening to the person that's with me. Next slide. This tug of war that goes on inside of me as I deal with internal struggles, I sometimes reactively listen to people and think about how I'm going to respond to them instead of listening to what they're saying. Then sometimes I focus my attention to other responsibilities I have. According to Lenny, the interrupting that I do, it's important for me to avoid that and to recognize that I do that, because in leadership, no one's going to follow you if you're not listening to them. And next slide. Now, something that's important for us to do, it's time for us to break the chain of poor listening habits and poor communication, and be mindful of how we communicate and listen to other people. It's time to quit with the fake attention. Listen to the people that are with you. Don't just act like you are. Don't be concerned with how they perceive you. Don't interrupt them. Stop doing that. Wait, let them speak, and then have your turn. Stop thinking about yourself when they're talking to you. Also, don't get lost in the rational. Listen to what the people are saying. Be with them when they're there. As I went through this process, I developed those 3 goals. Next slide. My first goal was for intimate and personal listening to build relationships. I can borrow from the concepts of Peterson and his TLC, the listener card model, talker listener card. I need to calm down and not own the problem. It's not mine when I'm listening. I need to provide a safe environment for the talker, and I also need to understand and clarify what the person is saying. I need to use mindful listening. I need to really focus on the conversation, everything that's happening and what's being said. I need to be in the moment, and I need to be present for the person speaking to me. Next slide. As far as directing productive conversations that encourage closeness, I need to quit making assumptions and listening to stereotypes. I need to be open to listening to the person that's speaking to me instead of being caught up in other things. I need to be open to understand. And nexting, according to Stewart, I need to do something fruitful next. I need to take additional steps in the communication process and communicate in a continuous way. Using Paraphrase Plus, like saying back to the person what they've said to me, will help them understand that I'm listening. Next slide. Communicating in a relational way that brings people closer to an intimate relationship with Jesus Christ. Motives are important. According to Stepp and Finucane, and people pay attention to this. Understand that if individuals make assumptions about your motives, that genuine interest is necessary for developing relationships, and relational evangelism is also important. You need to meet people where they are and build relationships where they are. I also need to be a living testimony for Jesus Christ. I want to thank you for going on this journey with me, and I hope you've learned from some of the concepts that I have as well.